Brodes Media.
You could look at the rest of the way for the Sixers. You got a Pacers effort in there. You got some of these teams after the Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks. But the point I'm trying to stress is I'm just ready for the postseason. And at this point, none of these games are going to change the way that I feel about this team. But Brodes, when they played Brooklyn, they looked horrible and they got beat out of the gym and it was embarrassing. You're right. But even with that loss, as I utilize this same reference all the time, and I think it's perfect. When you go back to the 2019 76ers versus the Toronto Raptors series, imagine the Raptors after they get blown out by 20 plus at the Wells Fargo Center, thinking that the series is over because there's another game in Philadelphia and they just lost by 20. What do you think happens? They come back game 4 and they win by single digits. Losing a game in the NBA regular season and even in the postseason, just because you lose by 20, it doesn't mean in 7 games you lose by 24 times and the rest is history. So this game against, I know that they're better than what they put on display that night. So here they are playing the Phoenix Suns and they went toe-to-toe with them and they ended up getting some troublesome situations because the Phoenix Suns are the best team in the entire NBA. But this was a winnable basketball game if James Harden just shoots the ball better and even shoots more. We saw that the night before, and I'm cracking up because I already see a comment in the chat that said, can we please get a better James Harden? What a terrible time for him to start sucking. He just had arguably his best game as a 76er in Staples Center, or whatever the hell they call it these days, crypto world, whatever the fuck it is. They just had one of his best efforts in a Sixers uniform just a day or two ago or so. So just relax. He had a tough one today, though. He had a tough one. And we need him to not, if this team is going to win playoff games, if they're going to go into a series and win a series that's going to be a hard-nosed battle, they need the James Harden from the Clippers game to be there in that game. And he's going to have to shut a lot of people up because the narrative around him, I'm sure he's certainly conscious of, and he understands that it's a talking point. James Harden doesn't come up big in big games, and tonight he did not have a big game. I thought he got so flustered and he got so involved in the emotional side that we lost him. And at this point, I think that is somewhat of the James Harden experience. It's when he has it on and he's not bothered by it. He's one of the most sensational players we've ever seen in this damn game. But when he does get hit in his feels, well, it could take him out. And as a primary point guard, see Chris Paul, 19 points, 14 assists. It's a lot easier to run and operate. But the Sixers, they hung in there, and even towards the end in the fourth quarter, I thought there was possibly a chance that they would pull this one out. And that's when Maxey hits a 3 to stop the drought. We're going minute after minute. You're seeing the clock tick off, tick, tick, tick. No buckets, no field goals, no points whatsoever until Maxey stops the bleeding by making a shot, finally a three-pointer. And Embiid gets low, and establishing a low presence is dominant for him. Obviously, he gets down there and places the ball, and he didn't shoot it. It wasn't even a layup. He basically took it and just placed it right in the basket. Maxey hits another 3, and then Embiid goes down to the line and it ends up having some free throws in there. So it was just a major push. But this game was kind of bonkers and all over the place while you see a double-digit run for the Sixers, a 12-0 run, and then the other team goes on their run where the Sixers don't score any points. And it was just one of those where two high-powered offenses and two high-powered teams are basically throwing haymakers. And this told me that the Sixers hung in there tonight against the best team in the NBA. I want to see this team get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the low. That's the worst case scenario better be this season an Eastern Conference Finals run. The East is significantly less than what you just saw with the Phoenix Suns. I'm using them as that's the best. Knowing the East isn't at that level, still great teams, still fantastic teams, and other squads that can hang with the Phoenix Suns too, even though the Suns have their tier. Because when the Sixers went on that spurt, what ended up happening? They countered perfectly. Devin Booker gets a mid-range J. I don't think Danny Green fouled him at all, but puts him to the line, which was a disgrace. And sure, the referees at times, they were obnoxious and they were hard to handle, and I thought that it made me uncomfortable with some of the decisions they were were making, but that wasn't the difference in this team winning this game or not. It got tough after that first quarter where they scored a ton of their buckets. I don't know how Devin Booker, though, was able to execute the way he did in that first frame. He's chatting, right? He's chirping nonstop, moving his mouth. You can't motivate the best players in the game like that. You can't give them outside noise or internal fire by starting to run your mouth, especially if it's someone on the bench who, what do you do? Who are you at the beginning of the game to jaw your damn mouth nonstop in the direction of a Devin Booker? I mean, seriously, what do you think is going to happen? This is why the young kids in these leagues, the young cats in this league, this is what happens when you give them something to hold on to. And Devin Booker was ridiculous. Wasn't as hot as the game played out after that first frame. In the second quarter, obviously, nowhere even close when it came to him getting some buckets. But you know who did do some solid work? Happened to be Tobias Harris. That was probably the best Tobias Harris we have seen all year long. It was really good out of him, and I don't know what that means because there doesn't seem to be a algorithm or an equation to get Tobias Harris to play this smoothly. Great decision making, know what he's going to do with the ball. Every time we do give Tobias Harris a positive and speak about a really great performance or just a really solid effort that we can all appreciate, it all stems from the same exact topic and the same exact bullet point that's next to his name, and he lets the game come to him while being aggressive at the same time. He's just picking and choosing the right methods to go about each possession, where in times past it's overthink. That's putting the ball on the floor and putting him in a position to fail, basically. While now it's the complete opposite. I have seen the conscious effort of taking threes, catch and shoot. He knows what he needs to do, but he's also got to execute it at the same time. I love the fact that he kept his foot on the gas, but he did it based off of what the game was giving him at the same time. He wasn't forcing it. He wasn't trying too hard to incorporate himself. It happened organically throughout the game, and it was a difference maker at that point. The Sixers looked like they were kind of in rhythm and in a groove there for a bit. I don't know how we get that Tobias more efficiently. I really don't. Anyway, after that Booker and one, just to backtrack a tad bit, speaking about the Suns' response to that Sixers push that maybe we thought would give them some sort of energy to finish out the game with a victory. DeAndre Ayton, good ball movement. The ball's moving. Guys are moving within flow of their offense, and they get the look that they're looking for pretty much 3 inches away from the rim, and it kind of stopped everything that the Sixers maybe thought that they had in that moment. Embiid tweaked his ankle. You see him hobbling. Even after a block, when he returned from the initial hobble, he starts to hobble again. And that just fits what I've kind of been discussing for a bit of time now, which is this team's beat up, but every team is beat up. This is the journey of an 82-game regular season. It's not as if the Sixers, when you see Harden at times play games slow and he doesn't look as powerful, not as much pop in his step, not as much push as you would like when he's driving to the basket. And Embiid, when he's holding his lower back, that's always the biggest scare. When he bends over towards his toes and he's pretty much holding his lower back because he's feeling some sort of discomfort. Every team has their version of their players who are feeling that same type of body damage to them. That's what happens when you get to this point. And that's why the toughest survive at this situation of the season. Now, when everybody woke up this morning, the Sixers were in first place. First place in the Eastern Conference. You lose today. Some other things happen around the league. The Boston Celtics, now it has shifted, and it looks like they're in the 4 seed. So from the winning and losing perspective, obviously I care about what the rest of the way provides for us. At the same time, my opinion is not going to change. What they do against Milwaukee, what they do against the Indiana Pacers, what they do against any other team that they have matched up left on their schedule this season, I'm not somehow going to go into a whole new mindset and philosophy of who they are. If their 2 players play the best that they possibly can, and then you get a good added bonus, whether it's Maxey, whether it's Tobias, it's just one of them, or it's a combination of the 2, and maybe you get a big night away from one player on your bench. It wasn't Niang today. Could it be a Danny Green? That Danny Green sequence had to be the funniest sequence I've ever heard. You know, that looks like pickup ball. Shoots from the three. Works hard to get his own offensive board. He grabs the board and then runs to the other corner as he's fading away, fading to his right, and he cashes it in. Nothing but net. Hysterical. Can your top two players perform efficiently enough to compete with these teams in the Eastern Conference, the Bucks? Now, today on the radio, I was joined by Marks, and she does some work on ESPN2. She does some work up in New York for Sports Talk Radio at 98.7 ESPN, ESPN2, The Daily Wager. So there's a lot of things that she does, and she joined me today on the Fanatic in studio. We had a blast. And we were discussing the NBA standings, and obviously up in New York, she brought up Kyrie Irving and the way that the vaccination stuff all changed. What does that mean for Kevin Durant? And it was a really interesting perspective. And it's just funny looking at the standings right now after the game, because one point that she brought up is she could see the Boston Celtics as the team to come out of the East. And that's kind of my point that I'm trying to make all the time is, okay, you're not wrong. It's in the cards. It's possible. Just like same with the Bucks, same with the Sixers, same with the Nets, who aren't really an 8th seed. They're not really a play-in team type of squad. They're not. They just didn't have Harden, Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and then they fell apart. But even when those guys were active and when they were available, they were winning a ton of basketball games. The reason why they're in the position that they're in is because their players weren't even there. They just weren't even playing regular season games for you. And yet a bunch of your role players playing severe minutes. And that's why they were in that situation where they were losing and going on one of the biggest losing streaks we saw this entire season. Referencing the Sixers, though, looking back at the Sixers and what we witnessed today, I saw a team that I know winning is the most important part. You want to win basketball games. You want to get yourself in the 1 seed. You want to escape from ever having to think about playing the Brooklyn Nets. It never wants to cross your mind this early because they're not really an 8th seed. 8th seeds are Charlotte Hornets. 8th seeds are the Jared Dudley Brooklyn Nets. That's what you should be seeing in an 8th seed, not someone with the type of lethal talent and killer mentality that the Nets have at the upper echelon of their roster. I can appreciate, though, what this team was capable of doing, and that was leaving everything out there, showing us what you have. I'm disappointed in Harden. I'm disappointed in Matisse Thybulle, who could only play 16 minutes. He was so piss poor that he's underneath the basket. Harden zips the ball beautifully right into his breadbasket. He's underneath the rim, and he misses it. Now, he gets fouled. He ends up not making his first free throw attempt, which really is just a big snowball effect of how this crushes you when you desperately need that defense on the floor. He also picks up bad fouls. Maxey was getting picked on. Speaking of defense, we loved when he picked on Tyler Hero, which we should, because that fourth quarter was outrageous, and it was a ton of bonkers feelings nonstop. Here he is making all these shots. Miami, oh, what are they doing? The Sixers don't even have Embiid or Harden. Maxey's flying. Well, what Devin Booker did in the early stages, Dude. That's what I wish we saw out of Harden tonight.